Thank you so much, Nambita. Much appreciated. It's my honor to serve this morning as the MC for today's discussion on technological affordances in open access tools for research support in the fifth industrial revolution. As you've seen, we've got an exciting discussion or roundtable discussion this morning, and we hope that we will be able to not just engage the panelists, but that you've actually come with your own questions around this topic. So, as we look into this topic, we will explore how emerging technologies are reshaping the way we support research and provide library services. The fifth industrial revolution is characterized by seamless integration of advanced technologies in various aspects of our lives, including education and research. Open access tools play a crucial role in this transformation, offering greater accessibility and collaboration opportunities. So, this morning, I'm pleased to introduce our distinguished panelists, Mr. Zongezo Mpikashe and Ms. Sibongiseni Mkwashu. Uh, and we also have our facilitator, Ms. Nambita Mangola, who will guide us through the discussions and ensure that we stay on track. Just to give a quick introduction to our distinguished panelists this morning. So, firstly, we have Zungezo Mbikashe. He is highly accomplished as a scholarly communications librarian with over 6 years of experience in academic libraries. Currently, he's serving as a scholarly communications librarian at Stellenbosch University. Songezo has a proven track record of digital repositories and administration, advocacy, and support for open access initiatives, copyright, and administration of e-journal management platforms. He holds a bachelor's in library and information sciences from the University of the Western Cape. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Songezo is an author of a novel called Inhlupheko Indiyazi Kum. He also has publishing house called Buyani My Africa Media House. So a big welcome to him, and we look forward to his insightful contribution as a panelist. Moving on to Sibongiseni Mpasho, affectionately known as Sibo. She is an alumna of the University of Cape Town, where she graduated in 2013 with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Sciences. Uh, atmos, atm, atmos, for English not coming to me. Clearly, the coffee has not kicked in. Atmospheric science and oceanography, and a postgrad diploma in library and information sciences. Sibo, you're making me stutter there with these qualifications. She also has an LLB from UNISA and is currently registered for an LLM at the University of the Western Cape. She also embarked on a professional career in librarianship at the South African Legal Information Institution, an online legal library. She furthered her career by serving in multiple capacities as a librarian for the City of Cape Town, junior and law librarian at Stellenbosch University, as well as a faculty librarian for the sciences, as well as a research and reference support librarian at the University of the Western Cape. And she's currently a librarian for circulation services at the University of Fort Hare. Her exceptional skills and dedication were recognized when she won the Early Career Librarian competition at the 2019 South African National Library and Information Consortium Conference. That same year, she presented at both the Library and Information Association of South African, LIASA, our this network conference, and the International Conference of Information Literacy, ISIL. So yeah, that is pretty much our two panelists who will take us through these discussions, which will be facilitated by Nambita. Um, I haven't introduced myself. For those of you that don't know me, I am Sylvester Jeffries. I am a senior librarian for learning and teaching, looking at information and digital literacies at the University of the Western Cape. And yeah, I'm just here to MC and make announcements as we go. So at this point, I think it is fitting to hand over the task to Ms. Nambita, who will facilitate the discussion, and then we will take questions and take it from there. Ms. Nambita, are you ready to go?
Sorry, Chair, we
Yes.
forgot an important task. We didn't welcome our people in my platform. So I'd like to ask Mr. Simon to do welcoming of my people. You know, in emerging library and without welcoming, it's not emerging. So we are welcoming people here before we start. So Simon, the platform is all yours. Then we'll take it from there. Thank you, Chair. I will just take it after Simon with the
Awesome.
discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Handing over to Mr. Majabela.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Sylvester, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you in this exciting workshop aimed at capacitating your technological skills in an open access tools for research support in the fifth industrial revolution. So as they have already introduced me, my name is Simon Mujapelo, the current Emerging Librarian of the Year. And also we are still extending our calls to those who wish to hold this prestigious award to apply no later than the 31st of July this month. So if you wish to become the Emerging Librarian of the Year, please make sure that you send all your documents. You do stand a chance. So thank you so much, and I believe we are going to have a fruitful day and we're going to learn. So thank you so much. Over to you, Nambita.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much, Sylvester. I nearly forget that it's that time of me to drop the mic as the imaging librarian. Thank you for the reminder that my time is already. Nevertheless, with those words, I want my panelists to give them 5 minutes to introduce themselves. In their introduction, may you please unpack for us why in the affordance? Because we all know that imaging librarian is all about technology. We only do the basic. We don't do the advance of introducing all these technologies. So when I want my panelists to introduce themselves, while they are introducing themselves, I want them to unpack technological affordance in open access tools for research support in the fifth industrial revolution. In their perspective, what do they understand about it? Thank you. Over to you, Sbungseni.
Thank you, Nambita. Thank you, Sylvester, for the elaborate introduction. Thank you also for the invite to the current emerging librarian. When we talk about technological affordances, we are looking at what technology can actually do in terms of assisting in the research process. How does it make or how does it allow the research process to be better, to be seamless, efficient, and effective? There are various tools that do exist, but some of them are not in line with the research process, and they are not, in essence, suitable for research purposes. They might be suitable for working on a project, a work project, or an assignment for a student, or ourselves in the profession doing our work on a daily basis. But you would find that some tools do not have or do not afford the structure of the research cycle, or they can't be used within that research cycle. Thank you. Over to Sang.
Thank you, colleagues. Greetings. I don't really think it will be necessary for me to repeat the introduction. Sylvester has done justice. Thank you, colleagues. My understanding of affordances, I will say especially or specifically in open access, are all those tools, technology tools that assist a researcher to pinpoint or to be able to begin with their research in a easy and a comfortable way. I'll make an example that I just got at Google. They said that it's more of those affordances on those tools. It's more of a door handle that's got a sign on it that tells you that you have to pull or you have to push, so you don't get to be confused which one or which way you should go. So as the librarians, we have a responsibility to enforce and to ensure that the tools that are there or the affordances that are there within the technology, sort of are there within the universities or the institutionals policies towards them. For example, there are this emerging technology of AIs. We can recommend, we can view those AIs as one of the tools, but how do we work with those tools, and then how do we enforce the integrity and avoid the compromise of the research integrity towards the usage of those tools? Thank you.
Thank you, Sangezo. I like the way you unpacking it, but I will debate later on. So in your perspective, Sangezo, what are the open access tools that you can recommend to a novice researcher if you were given a platform? There's a researcher, does not know anything, but he's just a novice. Can you unpack for us the tools that are out there, are open access, but they can enhance the research output?
Thank you so much, Ms. Mangola. It becomes a bit challenging when we have to specifically say that for a novice, but I will try my best, because what we as librarians believe so much is not to bombast a client with a lot of information, but unfortunately in this case we'll have to do so. I will first try to unpack or try to show a researcher or a novice the what do you call it, those tools or those databases that sometimes they take advantage of the novice researchers. Before I can even unpack the tools, I'll first highlight the predatory journals and also give the characteristics of those predatory journal. So by doing that, I'm trying by all means to first show the novice researcher that there is a negative side in the publication. There are those who are taking advantage of the novice researchers, and there are those who only do the publications for the financial gain instead of the research integrity. So to go back to the question, I will advise the novice to go for ORCID. I will advise the novice to go for PubMed. I will advise the novice to go for Google Scholar. I will also advise a novice to go for the the reference management tools, whereby you find about EndNote, you find the RefWorks, you find the Mendeley's. Also, I will advise the novice to take advantage of the LibGuides of the universities, because I believe those LibGuides, they're also part of the tools of the research of the open access. Even when it comes to these the scholarly communications, which is the repositories, so that they first learn and understand the way of publishing and how the research integration should be, and also how these tools are used. So those are the tools, or those are the some of the tools that I would advise, depending as well as the space where they are that researcher is, and also the what do you call it, the capacity of that institution that the researcher is using. So those are some of the tools that I will advise. Of course, not limited to, because the researcher also need to work around the research cycle that I think my colleague will touch base on. So those are some of the tools.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Asbo.
Thank you. As my colleague has alluded to some of the tools, in line with the research cycle, I would recommend platforms such as the Directory of Open Access Journals, institutional repositories, and Paywall, Google Scholar, especially in the discovery phase, to assist the novice researcher to understand what has already been published and to be able to identify gaps within the topic that they are looking at or they are researching in. Also look at what the literature is saying in that specific topic. Just to highlight Unpaywall, Unpaywall is an open access plugin that harvests open source content and makes it discoverable through a browser extension in Chrome, Mozilla, or any other browser. When the plugin encounters a DOI, it automatically directs you to an open access version of the work if it is available. So within the research cycle, we have the discovery, of which I've touched on a couple of open access tools one can engage in. In the gathering phase, the gathering and analysis phase, I would recommend statistical software such as R, research and data management repositories, government websites, the things like your Stats South Africa and international websites, things like the UN as well. They have a lot of statistics and information that one can gather and analyze there. Also GitHub, especially for the coders and any other information architecture. In the writing and publishing phase, I would recommend tools such as Google Docs, Zotero, Mendeley, open educational resources, LibGuides, as my colleague has alluded to. And we would also, in the last phase, which is the sharing and the impact phase upon publishing, we would look at ORCID IDs, transformative agreements, and data management plans as well. And also publishing your data as well in open access repositories. Thank you.
Thank you. You remind me, I once asked my researchers, when was the last time Google yourself? They were shocked when I asked them to Google themselves of the outcomes that comes with these free softwares. Nevertheless, one more question that I want to pose, because I'm gonna give 20 minutes because I'm targeting certain time that we can be able to revisit this question and debate about it. Please keep your questions coming on the chat so that we can have a proper conversation. Some of the tools are questionable due to complexity or compromise they cause to the integrity of their research. As the librarian, do we have any say or action to enforce the integrity with our researchers in our institutions? Sbo, I'm posing this question to you to take a lead, and Songezo, you will follow.
Thank you. As librarians, we do have a say, and we can action to enforce the integrity. We are the custodians of information. We are not the subject specialists in every field, such as health sciences, commerce, law, engineering, and the various other faculties that exist. but we do understand information. We do understand the research process for each faculty. What is it that they do in each faculty? So we can definitely, we do have a say, and we can action to enforce integrity. There are challenges with some of the research tools, which is the complexity of the tool, how it works. For instance, most people in humanities would be afraid to use R, whereas it can assist them if they've got questionnaires to analyze the data. That's where we come in as the librarians, to ensure training, advocacy for best practices, and to ensure tools are used effectively and they don't compromise the integrity of the research process as well. We can promote standards, advocate for the use of standard protocols and certain best practices when it comes to certain tools, things like Mendeley. Training is very intensive. I usually say to people no less than 2 hours, because the person needs to understand what is going on in the platform and how that platform can actually enhance or assist them in the research cycle to make their research process much more seamless and much more easier. Education and training on our part as librarians to enforce integrity and actioning, workshops and training sessions, guides and tutorials, collaborations with faculties as well. Understand from the viewpoint of the faculty, what is it that they are doing in terms of research and how we can assist them to make their lives much more easier when they're embarking on the research process and also when they want to publish as well. Even having joint training initiatives, develop joint training initiatives to integrate tool usage with subject-specific requirements, providing support and resources and consultation services as well, whether it's a one-on-one, depending on what the researcher is seeking, or also having it as a group consultation to see how we can assist them as the librarians. Promoting open access and transparency, encourage the adoption of open access policy that emphasize transparency and reproducibility in research as well. And also in closing, transparency in data management, advocate for transparent data management practices, including proper documentation and data sharing protocols. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sibong. From my perspective, in sharing the same sentiments, I will also add with the fact that we, as the vanguards of information or transformation, whereas librarians, we just first need to understand the fact that technology will always be here and always produce or introduce new trends. So what we just need to do, we just need to make sure that we train ourselves first thoroughly so that we can be able to train others. As in, for example, talk about the AI tools, for example, the ChatGPT. So how do we work with those new trends? We work with them in a way that we try and make sure that we regulate those AI or the usage of those tools. And also, how do we make sure that those tools are embedded towards or embedded with our use or our ways of doing things? Then we work with stakeholders, different stakeholders, and as mentioned by my colleague, we work with the faculties and to understand or to make sure that we understand the usage or the expectations of the usage of those technology affordances or those new trends. Also, I will say that with the data literacy trainings, we actually do more with that, because we try by all means to make a researcher to understand the needs for those usage or those data usage. For example, I will mention one of the platforms that I like the most here in our library. We just launched our new DMP. That the DMP is almost everywhere, like each and every institution, I believe they've got their own DMP. But how do you make sure that this DMP talks to the researcher? How do you make sure that this DMP talks to the funders? How do you make sure that this DMP talks to the research cycle? So ours is structured in a way that metrics will be produced from that DMP. Usage or research reusability is actually included in that DMP. So it's that kind of doing that makes those those tools to be used properly instead of compromising the usage, the research in the way. So I will also mention the fact that the webinars, similarly to this one, are one of the ways of engaging, are one of the ways of unlocking those researchers that are working alone at all those. So that's the way that's how I see it from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really daunting because they don't see us yet, but the integrity, because ChatGPT is posing a challenge that it make our feet uneasy to embrace these technologies. But I see that you really come up with this, with us, you crown us as librarian, as the people that we still have the key for all these researchers. What are the benefits of adopting repository, Mr. Songezo?
Thank you, Ms. Mangola. Look, the repositories are just one of the babies that I will say it's a baby to me, because it's one of the things that one of the platforms that I like the most, because metrics, you remember these academic institutions, they believe so much in metrics, bibliometrics, citations, and H indexing and all that. So the repositories, they play a huge role in making sure that the research is kept in a very safe manner, as well as the research metrics are produced through that. And also in terms of visibility or impact of the research towards the other researchers. For example, let's say you did your research, or we were still in the early days of research processing. So you do your research, and then you don't even know how the other research was done, or you don't even know what was researched about in this field that you're researching. So the repositories, they give that platform of visibility. It give that platform of impact, because even if you are not an affiliate of the particular institution, but there is the repository, it allows you to be able to see what is in that repository while you are not affiliated. It also gives the preservation and the wider audience, if I can put it that way. So the benefits are so much in such a way that the most importantly is the metrics, also in preservation. Even these SDGs, they are aligned now to these repositories. How so? It's easy now to be able to know through those repositories that which themes that are researched the most by looking at those repositories. So that's how my perspective is.
Ms. Bongsen, what is your take on this question?
Thank you. And to add on what my colleague is stating on the SDGs, remember, research that is funded by the public's money should be available to the public. So the benefits of adopting repositories and open access means that as the people have funded the research, they don't need in turn to pay to gain access again to that actual research. And the benefits, other benefits would be maximizing visibility, accessibility, enabling metadata harvesting, as my colleague has alluded to, providing access also to supplementary content without any extra costs. They enhance digital preservation, the control of scholarly works as well. And the institutional repositories also showcase or enhance the institutional research output impact, and to be able to assist in global rankings when universities and institutions are ranked. Access and availability constantly around the clock, as mentioned by my colleague. Impact tracking, that's always valuable in research, especially when it comes to the researchers and people wanting to apply for NRF rated as a rated researcher, and also even the postgraduate students applying for funding. NRF mandates anyone who applies to them to showcase their research impact. When you have open access repositories, it allows for such, because things like Figshare, where you can create we can create an account, upload your research in line with copyright provisions and intellectual property, meaning that you are not stealing your own research from the publisher. You are looking at whether you are actually liable, or you are actually allowed maybe to post a preprint or a post-print, or maybe wait about 6 months or 3 months before you can upload the actual article onto the repository, maybe such as Figshare or any data source as well. That also accounts for data visibility, publishing openly. It also accounts on it in terms of metrics to see how many people have actually downloaded the file and how many people have actually referenced the file. And that speaks to the research impact. Yes, it's all good and well that you as the researcher will be able to publish high quality research. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to account for the impact. Is your research actually reaching the masses? Are people actually engaging with the research? So with the benefits of adopting open access repositories, as my colleague has alluded to, that it strengthens also the quality of the research that we end up getting from the researchers themselves, because people will not be duplicating any studies. People will actually be innovative as they are encountering new research and finding other ways to do research-related things in line with the research cycle, or even be innovative in that course. It also allows for collaboration between institutions, departments across the board. Also allows for ethical considerations. It addresses copyright and intellectual property issues, as I have mentioned, that no copyright infringement is occurring in ensuring that the information that is housed on open repositories, it's not infringing any copyright. And also the open access repositories, they are seamless in terms of access through institutional systems. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add before we move, as well as the most important one is that we publish from different journals. Of course, we are pushing for open access, and to the journals that we are pushing our researchers to open access, and these transformative agreements are actually playing a huge role as well to publication. With the repositories, we also get the thingy that you get an opportunity whereby even if the journal that you published at is no longer publishing or is no longer available, or they decide along the way to be the hybrid journal or to be not an open access journal, so that article or that research output that was uploaded or that was kept to the repositories, it will be still available. And also, of course, it will depend on the copyright and also the policies of that institution, as well as that journal, the agreement with between those those databases and the institution. But most cases, that output or that research output will be still available in the repository, even if the journal has deciding to change their way of doing or to change their policies. So it's one of the most important one. Also, the collaboration, it actually enhances the collaboration the most, because what what other institutions are doing, or what other institutions are specializing at might be not what other institution is specializing in. So looking at those repositories, it means that one can be able to say, look, let me collaborate with that one because their metrics are so high in this particular field. So it's one of those. Thank you.
Thank you. In a nutshell, the transparency of these repository plays a key role in improving the visibility of our researchers. My question I have for you, Smo, how can we advocate the effectiveness of those repositories to our respective organizations as well as our researchers to embrace those repositories as one of the best technologies?
Thank you, Ms. Mangola. It is important, we as the librarians, to understand the policy around the publishing landscape, how it works. Ethical considerations, intellectual property considerations as well, and copyright implications as well, because there's always a monetary value attached to these things. Also educating the decision makers, the people with the checks, the blank checks, the decision makers, the people who decide what tools we can budget for and why we should budget for them, especially looking at the organization that you are at and lobbying, the institutions to recommend open access to benefit them, sell them on the cost and the benefit. Highlight mainly the benefit. Yes, the cost, as open access is not free, it needs to be also dealt with, and how it will also impact, the longevity of that repository, how it will be managed, who will manage it, policy that needs to be updated. It needs to be in line with South African law as well, in line with Copyright Act and intellectual property provisions as well, and any other legislation that is affected. The upkeep of that repository as well. Sell them, because we do have the tools. As my colleague has alluded, that we are the custodians. We are aware of how information works, and we ourselves train ourselves in line with the publishers and the people who the softwares belong to. They train us. So we are aware of the positives that people can benefit from open access. Highlight also things such as the visibility and the impact and what it means. My colleague also alluded to SDG goals, that the government in itself is recognizing open access in fulfilling the SDG goals. And I know UWC has looked quite thoroughly at it. They've had publications aligning with their research output, aligning with the SDG goals. And the government is taking notice. It's referencing those publications and those outputs, and also showcase institutional champions in the field, people who've done it, success stories, people who've done it and they've done it well. They've taken into consideration the cost impact, because budgets are always cut in libraries. People who will account for the type of skill set that will be required, and also look at how it will be the longevity of having that type of project, which is an open access repository. Also promote standards within the high standards and best practices for metadata and data management. advocate for the use of persistent identifiers to ensure long-term accessibility and interoperability. Also, engaging stakeholders, engaging researchers, faculty, and have cross collaboration between institutions as well. Having educational campaigns as well, which would be the training aspects and having workshops. And we can become the advocacy of open access and provide guides, tutorials, and resources to facilitate the adoption and the effective use of repositories. Thank you.
All right. From my perspective, colleagues, it all goes, or it first goes with the copyright around those repositories, which means that we need to enforce the regulations of the institutions towards what we deposit to those repositories, or what we put in those repositories. And also we need, as librarians, to make sure that the quality of the output or research output that we include in those repositories, and also the separations of platforms within those repositories. For example, at Stellenbosch University, we've got Sun Scholar Data, which is the platform that deals with only the data. It's a repository, it's a data repository, as well as how do we advocate for that, as well as we've got a Sun Scholar, which is the institutional repositories that has to do with the research outputs or the articles and all that. So we've got a Sun Digital. So we are separating those platforms within the repositories to make sure that we don't want to just mix match everything. Let's say you're looking for this specific one and you're looking for the research output, and then out of the blue you're getting a data set or something. So it's a quality of the research, or that it's a quality of the research that we put in those repositories, or that we deposit in those repositories, and the way we separate them. Then in terms of, as still the librarians, in terms of the proper or the proper way of managing those repositories, we must make sure that the metadata that we put in those repositories, it doesn't compromise the visibility or the impact of the research. For example, let's say you deposited something, or we deposited something, but by negligence we just doing as much as I would say we compromise in terms of the metadata. So a researcher is struggling to be able to find the research output that is looking for, or in fact, any client is struggling to be able to pull out the research output from those repositories. So it's a quality and regulations, as well as the separations of platforms. Also, in terms of the workshops, how do we make sure that we promote those repositories? We always engage in the workshops. We must always make sure that we engage and we talk about those repositories in those stakeholders meetings. For example, the faculty meetings. We must make sure that those faculty members or those faculty teams, they understand the need and the use of those repositories. In terms of monitoring those repositories, we must make sure that we are monitoring them in a way that we always produce the report in terms of the metrics, in terms of the normal report of the usage of those repositories. And also, how do we make sure that we always find ways of making sure that we showcase those repositories in the spaces like this, in the spaces of the conferences, and in spaces of webinars, in the spaces of collaborations, we talk about those. So it will make the visibility, or sorry, it will make the effectiveness of those repositories to be more, as well as within the institution and outside of the institution. There's nothing nicer about hearing from someone asking you about your repository, saying that I've seen something in your repository, it's quite good, it's quite interesting. So you get to do such things, and it will make sure that those repositories are effective within the organization and with outside stakeholders as well. Thank you.
Thank you, my panelist. Now it's question and answers. I think some of the questions you did answer. There's a question, how are your researchers at the various universities embracing ORCID? So in some institutions, they have a drive to collect the ORCID and advocate when it comes to RDM, the fixed share. When you are doing the training for your fixed share, you can ask to integrate your ORCID. However, I'm gonna hear from my panelists. How can they answer that? I'm giving the platform to you guys. We'll decide which one answer it, the question.
Okay, let me go first. From my institution, my knowledge is that whenever you publish, you need to integrate with your, sorry, whenever you publish, you need to integrate your ORCID ID within the thing and with the research paper or with the research output. And then whenever we upload that research to any of those platforms, we make sure that we put that ID as well in that repositories. But that's not limited to, but that's how we do it.
Can I also add?
Yes.
Is that the drive home is that it is important for the researchers at all universities, especially if they want to apply for funding, to have an ORCID ID. And an ORCID ID is not only limited in terms of its use, it is integrated with the institutional repositories. It is also integrated with things like Figshare, and also, as alluded by my colleagues, is that institutions, they utilize the ORCID IDs of the researchers to pull in or to track the research output for that year. Also, ORCID IDs are also integrated with the profiles that exist in various databases. One, it allows the researchers themselves to be able to track their own research. Two, because ORCID acts as a professional CV in itself, a person will be able to see how many publications, for instance, Sibongiseni Mkhwashu has, and what's her focus in terms of subject specializations. So at the various universities, researchers have embraced ORCID because they are mandated by NRF when they are applying for funding to have an ORCID ID. NRF does not process any application without a person having an ORCID account. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add as well, something that comes to my mind now. We usually have internally workshops here at my workplace, whereby we try by all means to interchange or change the topics, but mostly the ORCID is mostly there so that people can get to that, because researchers are not really resistant towards the ORCID, but I'm not sure whether it's ignorance or what. I don't want to label it because I'm not quite sure the specific reasons why they are a bit with the ORCID. But we try by all means to do those workshops. We try by all means to include them in the webinars that we're doing, because we are trying by all means to support the open access and NRF as well, because we know it very well that the funding or the funders, they do need or they do want those ORCID ID, because how do I pull your research if there's one or two things that are not integrated in the research output?
I've got 2 minutes because at 5:02 we need to hand over to our MC so that we can do a vote of thanks. But I want us to address this one question from Yanga. Do we as librarians suggest tools based on what our respective institution offer, or do we suggest tools in alignment with the fifth IR tools we might happen to know but are outside our scope of responsibility?
Okay, can I go?
Yes.
From my perspective and my work field, I do suggest the tools that are within or aligned with my institution. These are my reasons. I need to know the policies that that are involved around those tools. I mustn't just, for example, say to someone, please use this specific tool, and then by the end of the day, that tool is not regulated in my institution, to an extent that that tool might compromise the research according to the scope of my institution, or according to the scope of the institution that we're working on. So I usually suggest, of course, you will open the eyes of this researcher and tell him that it's not limited to these tools. For example, I'll just make an example about this Mandalay, EndNote, and RefWorks. I will usually recommend the tools that the institution is advocating mostly for, because I am 100% sure and I'm aware what are the policies and regulations around those tools specifically. There are other platforms, but I will tell the researcher that, listen, this is what the institution is using, but of course it's not limited to. So yeah.
Okay. Do institutions have guidelines on quality management of their institutional repositories?
Yes, there are guidelines, and there are policies around the guidelines of managing the institutional repositories. There is no way that we can work without them. They are, and also they are public to the researchers, of course, because you need to know how you work around those repositories. You need to know when you have to question around those repositories. There are guidelines, and there are trainings. There are also webinar, what do you call it, a LibGuide around that.
Yes, policies are everything, because without policies, you can't enforce one, you can't regulate, you can't do any
Yes.
quality management on those
Yes,
repositories. With that said, I'm handing over to Mr. Sylvester, because of the time we are only booked up until 10 o'clock, and I don't want to disadvantage other people to continue with because we've got other commitment, because my panelist has to leave at 10. So due to that time, other questions will send with the small package that we compile for you. We'll ask Apelele to distribute after the event. Mr. Chairperson, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been incredibly insightful, listening to this discussion. I just want to check before I do a final closure to this. We also had, let me just find that, Mrs. Vera van Wyk from Nevada LMS to have a final remark. Is that still happening, or may I close?
Sylvester, if you allow me, I will say a few words of thanks. Thank you for this quick introduction. I want to address our honored Mr. Songisu and Mrs. Sibongazini. I'm going to put off my camera for better network, and I will continue as follows. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks for your enlightening presentation. I'm a novice to this topic. Your insights were incredibly valuable and have significantly broadened my understanding of the topic. I was fascinated by the innovative use of open access tools and how they are revolutionizing access to information, fostering collaboration, and enhancing research outputs. Your examples of how technological affordances are enhancing the capabilities of libraries in supporting researchers were both inspiring and practical. It is clear that these advancements are empowering researchers and enabling more efficient and impactful research. Your presentation has encouraged me, and I thank you again for sharing your expertise and inspiring us all to embrace the future of research support in the library industry. As this is the last seminar for 2024, I also want to express my thanks to our passionate Miss Nambita. It is her last seminar, and I have a little bit of sadness in me because she has set a very high benchmark for all emerging librarians. I also want to thank Simon for his attributions this year, and Liasa, especially Afilili, who has always been kind to give us a shot. And lastly, our Anita Havenga, who has acted as coordinator between the emerging librarians and Liasa. Without the support of the two institutions to which our librarians, emerging librarians are connected, we could not have them attending to their objectives. My sincere thanks, and may you have a good, blessed day. Thank you. With that, I close the meeting.
Thank you very much. That has been great, and I think it was well said and closed by Ms. Frieda van Wyk. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it, and again, a specific thanks to Nambita for making this happen, specifically with this topic and this kind of discussions. We really appreciate it. Also, thanks to the panelists as well as the heartwarming introduction by Mr. Moja Pelo. Much appreciated, everyone. We will consider the session closed. Thank you.